It started as the Brexit ballot, designed to deliver a massive majority, and now it's a close contest fought on security and policing. We'll examine the issues at the heart of the UK general election. I'm Dana Lewis, and this is Insight. Welcome to Insight. British Prime Minister Theresa May shocked the political world here in the UK in April by calling a general election less than halfway into a 5-year term. It was originally all about Brexit, a vote designed to deliver a big majority for her ruling Conservative Party as they head into negotiations with Europe. But it is often said that a week is a long time in politics, and that has proven to be the case here, where a big lead in the polls has apparently vanished and the talk has turned from Brexit and the economy to policing and anti-terror tactics. We'll discuss the issues with the panel of guests here in a moment, but first, here's a quick recap of just over 1 month of campaigning.
Since I became Prime Minister, I have said that there should be no election until 2020. But now I have concluded that the only way to guarantee certainty and stability for the years ahead is to hold this election and seek your support for the decisions I must take. And so tomorrow, I will move a motion in the House of Commons, calling for a general election to be held on the 8th of June. So I have a simple challenge to the opposition parties. You have criticised the government's vision for Brexit. You have challenged our objectives. You have threatened to block the legislation we put before Parliament. This is your moment to show you mean it, to show you are not opposing the government for the sake of it, to show that you do not treat politics as a game.
I welcome the opportunity for us to put the case to the people of Britain to stand up against this government and its failed economic agenda, which has left our NHS in problems, which has left our schools underfunded, which has left so many people uncertain.
She clearly sees the opportunity, given the total disarray in Labour, to crush all opposition, to get rid of people who disagree with her, and to get a free hand to take the UK in an ever rightward direction.
It's a great opportunity for the British people to choose to change the direction of our country.
Let us tomorrow vote for an election. Let us put forward our plans for Brexit and our alternative programmes for government. And then let the people decide.
We welcome the general election, but this is a Prime Minister who promised there wouldn't be one.
I'll give you the figure in a moment.
You don't know it? You're logging into your iPad here. You've announced a major policy and you don't know how much it'll cost?
Can I give you the exact figure in a moment,
Is this not exactly the issue with people and the Labour Party?
It's going to be very like this. There are going to be 7 of us there, and I hope you're looking forward to it. I hope you're going to be ready to answer it. So first of all, what is your name? Tell me your name.
Amity.
Hello, Amity. Now, Amity, tell me, what would you do when you're Prime Minister?
The most important thing would probably be helping to fund the NHS, and I will get us back into the EU as well.
Right.
Because of your government's conscious decisions on benefits.
Jeremy, if you out of food bags, where to have people not using food bags.
There's 2 of you coming at me now. I'm not sure which I'm going to take.
That they can have a good job.
Sharon, you've argued for this election being about providing a good and credible opposition. I thought I'd like to get Amber onto this.
Immigration is an important part of building our country, strengthening our economy.
What we need to do is we need to reduce immigration, and we do it by having an Australian points-based system.
Particularly on terrorism, if I may. We have to make sure we also have the right legislation. And I am shocked that Jeremy Corbyn, just in 2011, boasted that he had opposed every piece of anti-terror legislation in his 30 years in office. And I really think he must be held accountable for that, because I find it chilling.
A Prime Minister who cannot be trusted.
Princess
She says it's about leadership.
It's me and my team that have that strong and stable leadership. We need to ensure we've got that strong and stable leadership. We need that strong and stable leadership now more than ever.
Yet is refusing to defend her record in television debates.
I think debates where the politicians are squabbling among themselves doesn't do anything for the process of electioneering. I think actually it's about getting out and about, meeting voters and hearing directly from voters.
Why should the British public trust you and your peers to negotiate Brexit?
Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm very sorry this is not a debate, this is a series of questions. I think it's a shame the Prime Minister hasn't taken part in the debate.
Sorry, you're dodging the question, aren't you? I'm saying, are you saying there are no circumstances under which you'd use it?
Any circumstances where anyone's prepared to use a nuclear weapon is disastrous for the whole planet. That is why there has to be a policy of disarmament and globally, but through a multilateral policy, not a unilateral policy.
But that's the ideal. But what about the reality, where you're faced with the prospect that you may have to use it? I'm just asking for a simple answer.
On the one hand, David, you've got politicians in Europe, some of whom are talking about punishing the UK for leaving the EU. I think what they want to see in terms of that punishment would be a bad deal. And secondly, you've got politicians here in the United Kingdom who seem to be willing to accept any deal, whatever it is, just for the sake of getting a deal. And I think the danger is they'd be accepting the worst possible deal at the highest possible price. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for me, having become Prime Minister after the referendum when David Cameron resigned, to say, you know, the next election's not till 2020. This is a good job. I enjoy doing this job. I want to do, in this job, I do what I believe is the best for Britain. I could have stayed on doing that job for another couple of years and not called an election.
Your party called
I had the
European
balls to call an election.
for the good of the Conservative Party. You've called a general election for the good of the Conservative Party, and it's going to backfire on you.
Let's talk politics. I'm joined by Eunice Goish, who is an associate professor of politics at Richmond University. With us also is the journalist and author Thomas Killinger. And finally with us in the UK election discussion is the political commentator Michael Goldfarb. Eunice, maybe I can begin with you. This was the election nobody cared about. And suddenly it has become a very important election. But before we go into what's developed over the last week, why did Theresa May call this election in the first place? What was she hoping for?
Well, she was hoping to increase a majority in the House of Commons, and she was hoping to increase it by a large landslide. I think she was expecting, at the very least, to have a majority of 100 MPs. Well, the opinion polls have shown that is very unlikely to happen. It looks like the margin is decreasing as we advance, and so she might end up with only 50 or at maximum, at best, 70 MPs extra.
She had a big majority, Thomas. Why'd she need a bigger one?
Well, she didn't have a big majority at all. She had 17 MPs, larger than all the other parties put together. And let me be fair to her. It's been said that she called the election because she was so far ahead and it would be easy to absolutely rout the Labour Party. But she also called it because she wanted to have a longer term in office. In 2020, which would have been the next election time, it would have coincided with the end of the Brexit negotiations. And that would have overhung the entire negotiation, would have caused a great deal of domestic dissent. And now she has until 2020, which gives her a lot more leeway to negotiate with the EU in greater peace of mind and not having to confront an election looking over her shoulder while we come to the end of the negotiation.
She may have one looking over her shoulder very soon. But, Michael, was this to deal also internally with her own party and her ability to maneuver?
It's always to deal with the internal dynamics of the Conservative Party. In that last clip we were watching, you know, the Brexit vote last year was to finally squash this debate that's been going on inside the Conservative Party for 35 years.
That didn't go well, did it?
And it didn't. No, and it cost David Cameron his job. He thought, well, we'll win this, and that'll shut all of the, you know, Brexiteers up, and I can carry on being Prime Minister. And he lost that one. And now she also, I mean, she has a small majority, who are very, very anti-EU. She wanted a bigger majority. It might be more pliable. That way, if she lost some votes, she could still pass things. And what Thomas says is absolutely true. There is no way that having triggered Article 50, which means that in 2 years they have to come up with an agreement, 2019, her term of office was going to end in 2020. There was no way it's going to be finished in 2 years. By rolling it over, which is a unique feature of the British system. I mean, you know, it's like rolling over your retirement account. Say, well, I'm not going to draw this month. I'll just keep the money in, let it draw interest. She doesn't have to face the country, assuming she wins until 2022. Well, that gives her more time to negotiate the Brexit. And it's a classic, by the way, of the EU. Right. They just keep pushing things down the road. And I think that she took the first step.
I mean, it was partially designed to deal with her own party politics, but Eunice, it was also to give her a bigger bat, if you will, to deal with Brussels in those upcoming negotiations?
Well, Brussels say, this is what Theresa May says, but Brussels says that it makes no difference whatsoever the size of a majority, because there are certain issues that they need to discuss, and the margin of maneuver she'll have in Parliament will make very little difference.
Is that smoke and mirrors, or is that true?
There's a bit of smoke and mirrors, but she's already signaled that she wants a hard Brexit. So we don't know what kind of room for maneuver she's hoping to acquire in the coming weeks. She'll have to pay, she'll have to bill to Brussels. She'll have to guarantee the rights of European citizens pretty soon, those who live in the United Kingdom, before any other type of negotiation is done. And let's remember something else. It's the Great Britain against 27 member states. So Britain is always going to be on the losing side.
If I may add, she has a credibility problem, because we know that she was a Remainer before the result was out in the referendum, and she converted, as it were, to Brexit, if not hard Brexit, overnight, which is very astonishing, because unlike Cameron, who was more genuine when he said, I lost the referendum, he had to withdraw and step down. Now, Theresa May just changed her mind.
And she changed her mind about many other things.
Not the first time she's changed her mind in this campaign, because if I may put you onto the dementia tax,
yeah.
They came up with this tax, Michael, maybe you can explain, and then had to go back and retrace their steps on it.
Yeah, well, we have a growing problem in this country, which is, and it's similar throughout the developed world. People are living longer. State provision for pension will never catch up to extended life expectancy. So how do you fund retirement? So she came out and she did something, I think, it's actually quite risky. I don't know. I mean, more power, at one level, more power to her. She said...
It was risky, and they've paid a price.
People will have to fund, out of the extraordinary growth in the value of property, they will have to fund much of their own care if they live into their 80s and so on. And of course, you know, the elderly vote Conservative, because the Conservative Party for decades has said, we're not going to tax your pensions. If you accumulate during your lifetime, you know, up to £1 million, you can pass that along to your children and your grandchildren free of tax. And so basically she was coming along saying, do you know, we're going to change that. Unfortunately, in the middle of a general election campaign is probably not the time to do it. Mm-hmm. And that, it was like, I don't know, okay. I mean, but here's a point in that's important about her, is that she survived 5 years as Home Secretary. It's a very difficult job to stay in, because she was completely unknown. She was a sphinx. She had 2 or 3 advisors. She never made public statements. And now this is the first time she's had to be in public almost every day. And the more the public gets to see her, and her 2 or 3 advisors come up with this idiotic idea electorally of a dementia tax, the more people are questioning her. And there's been this remarkable slide in her polling numbers.
But Eunice, we talked about the old.
Yes.
The elderly. Talk to me very quickly about the young. I mean, there are a lot of first-time voters, 18 to 30, 18 to 35. They're a wild card here, and they can be very important when the vote takes place.
They are the ones who are going to decide this election, because the 18 to 24s are overwhelmingly supporters of the Labour Party. So that can make a very, very different. What is on their mind? It's tuition fees for university. It's the price of housing. It's low wage. Is insecure work. Is essentially the general prospect of a life of misery, which is essentially what the promises of the Conservative parties made during this election, whereas Jeremy Corbyn promises an alternative to this vision.
Thomas, will they come out and vote?
Well, that's a big question. Difficult to answer. It also depends on what kind of weather we're going to have. If it's as bad as it happens to be now, we don't know. But I think, let me remind you why the Corbyn agenda is so popular. When Cameron came to power, he used that famous phrase, broken Britain. He felt at that time, 6 years ago, that something was rotten in the state of England, in the case of Great Britain. And broken Britain is exactly what Corbyn is after. There's so many deficiencies, so many things which are not working. People earning a living, but it is not a livable living. It often has to be supported by the government. And so really, this is a huge, huge burden on people who have seen their life standard, living standard decline because they don't get any pay rises anymore. Inflation is higher than their pay rise they get annually. It is really a scandalous situation. And Corbyn has really a big trump card to play.
Michael, do you want to add on to that?
Just, I mean, the dynamics between British society and American society, British economy and American economy are quite unique. It's the same thing. And just as last year, Bernie Sanders came out of nowhere, an elderly backbencher, essentially. Right. He's been in Congress for 25 years. Nobody knew who he was except those of us who were political geeks. And suddenly, the youth, 18 to 25-year-old kids are looking at a 74-year-old white-haired guy and saying, he's saying what I want to hear. Now here's Jeremy Corbyn. He's in his late 60s. He doesn't. He's
saying what they want to hear.
They want to hear.
But and of course, it's not a question. And the thing is, there's something fundamentally authentic. They don't look like packaged politicians. And it's not just that they're saying, well, I'll tell you this because it's what you want to hear. All right. They actually believe what they're saying. And that makes a difference. We're going to come right back and
carry on with that. But terror has changed everything in this election, and we're going to talk about it. This is Insight. We'll have more on the UK election when we return.